Videotape, VHS. It's the bloodline of movies, the home video market.
I think in the same way that vinyl sort of had a resurgence recently, that I think that the kind of physical product and is something that people kind of miss now.
You put it into a VCR and it starts winding its tape out and the gears start going and it makes that sound and you start to watch a movie come alive on your TV screen.
I love VHS!
VHS had this grainy, smudgy image that kind of added this whole other layer to the movie. The old video transfers coupled with that second generation dub quality and the low resolution, it really gave it a unique feel. It's almost like an old analog color grade. You can watch it on an HD TV and an SD TV and it looks the same. And plus there were more titles released on VHS than any other format, and a lot of those titles are still only available on VHS.
I think human beings by nature respect ritual. And in the VHS era, there was a ritual to watching a movie on VHS. You oftentimes had to go to the store, select the movie out of many, pay for it, bring it home, physically take it out of a box and physically put it into the VCR and physically hit it. There was a multi-step process so that by the time you were watching I Spit on Your Grave or Deep Red or Ernest Saves Christmas, you felt like you'd earned the privilege and the right to do it.
I remember just the classic sort of feel of watching the tape, seeing all the fuzziness on it, knowing that every time you put it on, you don't know when it's going to skip or go a little bit dodgy. So do you kind of miss that?
Sometimes easiness isn't better. It cheapens the experience. You're watching something on VHS and this tape itself that you have costs $70 because they before they were really available in the market to buy. To rent something meant that you were being trusted with something that had X amount of value to it that you probably couldn't even pay if you lost it. So you had to be careful. And then afterwards you have to eject it and take it back to the store. Sometimes before your parents realized you'd actually rented the thing in the first place. I think that just it lent a specialness, a sacredness to the experience that's quite easily lost now.
It's like hooking yourself up to an IV monitor. It's seeing something really move, really have a feeling to it, a tangible feeling to it, come alive on the TV screen. VHS lives, it never dies.
I run Film Trauma. Film Trauma is a small video distribution company. We specialize in VHS. We also do DVD and other formats too, but primarily VHS.
We are sitting inside my video store, Old School Video. We've been open about 2 weeks now. Business has been pretty steady the entire time. We've been setting up new memberships every day, which is always awesome. A lot of horror fans have been coming and checking out our horror wall that we have here. I'd say that our top renters are probably the horror movies and the new releases and kids and family films. We kind of cater to two different crowds. A lot of horror fans come here for the rare stuff that we have, and then there's a lot of the local families in the neighborhood that come to get the new releases and the kids' movies, and it's been a lot of fun, really. You know, I didn't really know what to expect at the beginning of doing this, but it's a lot better than, I anticipated. The first few days we were open, we were really busy. We had an article that got published in the local newspaper, and there was a lot of hype, I think, because of that. After the first 3 or 4 days, it kind of died down a little bit, and we kind of sat back and looked at what we had to do to increase business, and we changed our hours and our days, and things picked right back up, and we've been pretty steady every day. I've got a 2-year lease here, so we have at least 2 years of doing this. Hopefully that we stay successful the entire time, enough that we can continue after the 2 years and keep expanding and keep adding to the inventory and keep introducing the world to renting movies.
So in 2012, I lost my day job, and that wasn't really that bad because I was sick of working retail anyway. I felt like I could be making money for myself instead of some big company. I wanted to do artistic stuff for myself, and in my spare time, I was actually doing VHS releases monthly with a friend, and that was doing well, so I figured I could do it myself. And so I went off and I started King of the Witches. The first couple of releases were mixtapes that I made myself. This is the first one. It's called Party Levitation. Doing stuff like this led it on to people getting in touch with me to release their films. And the first one we did was Emancipation by Ron DeCaro. So we started catering to the more extreme horror films, and we eventually did like Mr. Rave's First Date by Nick Box. We did a bunch of Ryan Nicholson films. We went on to do Inner Depravity, which is an extreme, really infamous Canadian gore film. But I really wanted to do obscure documentaries and stuff from the 80s, not necessarily horror. We did both of the Desperate Teenage Love Dolls films, and those did really well for us. That led us to doing The Goddess Bunny, which is a crazy documentary. We did Movie House Massacre. Most recently we did Barn of the Blood Llama, which is a schlocky throwback to 70s films. It was kind of like a lost film from the 90s that never got a release. So we did it, and it's become a full-time job finding the rights holders and filmmakers for these films, and I don't even think about getting a day job anymore.
Back in those days, adult titles were kept on the top 2 shelves of the rental racks, and so if you went up to the rack and you looked at the movies, but if you looked through the rack and up, you could see the backs of the boxes, of the adult boxes on the other side. And so that was great until the video store owners got wise to it and started using like the bookcases, or altogether just put them in different rooms, like whole separate rooms.
Very, very late 1970s and early 1980s, it was pioneered by the porn industry. The adult film industry, the XXX industry, they were the filmmakers, if you will, that actually first established that there was a huge, viable, money-making market for their products on home video. People wanted to see uncut, XXX rated films on videotape in the privacy of their own homes. And it was after the porn industry actually established that fact that, again, the other non-adult film distributors actually jumped on the bandwagon and started releasing a lot of drive-in hits initially. And then, the bigger studios like Paramount Home Video and Warner Home Video, they jumped on that bandwagon too, releasing their films. But it was actually that adult film industry that launched the home video market as we know it.
So I remember we rented, Return of the Living Dead. That was the first time I had ever seen that movie. And I remember we were watching at night, and right when Linnea Quigley starts to take off her top, the dad comes in and goes, "Oh, this isn't appropriate," and then he shuts it off, and then I never got to finish it that night. But luckily enough, I talked my dad to let me watch that, the next night, because he had a copy of it, and he was like, "Okay, I'll let you watch it."
So the first porno tape I ever saw was this movie called Beverly Hills Copulator with Tracy Lords. We went to my friend's house after school and his parents were gone and they left the tape in the VCR. So of course we watched it, and we watched the whole tape, and he was convinced he knew exactly where we came in, so he rewound it. But I mean, he went way past it. So his parents came home and they figured out we watched the tape, and they didn't really care, so we didn't get busted. And Tracy Lords hadn't come out yet as being underage, so that was still pretty cool.
Don't look in the basement. The makers of Last House on the Left warn you again. To avoid fainting, keep repeating. It's only a movie. Only a movie. Only a movie. The line between sanity and madness can be crossed in a single step. And with this step, you enter the nightmare world of terror. Judge Kamen, whose iron self-control hides the urge to kill. Harriet, a mother's love, twisted into the malignant shape of evil. The sergeant, living in the hell of an aimless war, fighting a battle within himself that he lost long ago. Allison, in a desperate need for love, an obsession that could drive her to murder. Danny, whose sense of humor triggers a violent act of revenge. Dr. Masters, who has her own idea of the gentle art of healing. And Charlotte, who left the world of sanity and security only to be trapped in the nightmare world of madness, a nightmare she cannot escape. They all met on the day the insane took over the asylum. Don't look in the basement. From Hallmark Releasing Corporation, rated R.
The first VHS tape I bought was actually not a VHS tape at all. It was a beta tape. I had a Sony Betamax that I saved my money and bought back in 1978. And quite literally, that first movie that I bought on tape was Don't Look in the Basement, a film that was shot actually in the early 70s near where I lived at that time. And anyway, it played drive-ins, and I'd seen it at the drive-in actually a few years earlier as a small kid, really small. When I bought the movie on videotape, beta tape at the time, I was upset because when I watched it, I found that they had cut all of the more graphic sequences out, like the scene where the young lady inmate is grabbed by the back of the head and she's pushed down or shoved down onto this like pointed letter holder thing, and it poked in her eye socket. And I remembered at the drive-in, the scene with her falling back and this letter holder, whatever you want to call it, had like a nail protruding upwards that you place these papers down on. It was gouged into the eye, and there was a scene of her lying there with it protruding from the eye. And so I bought this movie, and yet all these scenes like that were cut. And man, I thought, well, this really sucks, right? And that was kind of the beginning of the video craze for horror. Initially, it was felt that, I guess by the distributors back then, that home audiences didn't necessarily really want to see the gore. They were still editing some of the films that, or the horror films at the very least, that were being initially released to videotape. It wasn't long before there was an outcry from people left and right, horror fans like myself, letting the distributors know that, hey, we want our gore intact at home.
We're sort of in the beginning stages of the business, I think that after our first year, things will be a lot different here than it is now, but right now I'm just really having a lot of fun, just getting to know people and seeing what it's like running a business and opening a video store in 2017. I mean, that's pretty much unheard of. I just read an article that there was a video store, I think, in Arizona that actually closed the same time that we opened. So how's that for irony?
I think you had to be good to be a director back then, and although there was, of course, a studio system, I feel like a lot of directors started out with small budgets and they got somewhere by, doing these movies that were released on VHS. And, they got out there where, now it's very hard because we're in like this digital age where you just got a guy with a computer, and a camera, like a $3,000 camera, and they're doing like ridiculous. They're creating a lot of flash, and that's something that I think is taking away from filmmaking. Flash with computers. There's too much flash. You go back to the '80s style, and like I said, you had to be good. You had to have a feel without the computers, and that's impossible for, I think, even a lot of Hollywood directors now to really do.
I think VHS is so important because it was a time when once we had VHS and you started renting movies and bringing them home and going, like the shot on video stuff, I could make that. And so it opened the door for a whole bunch of people who would have never made films otherwise. Some of them probably shouldn't have ever made films. But a lot of, it opened the door and the floodgates for tons of people who had wanted to make a movie, thought maybe they could never do it. It gave us a whole slew of new filmmakers.
John Carpenter, comes to mind. I mean, that's a guy that created just a feel, like he even the music, was just so iconic, camera work, everything, like that. Again, that encompasses those VHS, that 80s feel. It's just it has its own style where, as we talked about, like newer directors, just it's not like their work, it's a studio system's work,
The first VHS tapes that I purchased were probably, when the sell-through market started to come into play, were Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. I think that was like $39.95. Then later Flashdance, and then Staying Alive. Yes, I have really pathetic, weird taste. And then, of course, when all the titles started coming down to reasonable prices, anywhere from the $12 to $20 range, boy, I went crazy. But I do remember the first titles I bought were Halloween on the media label, and then Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And then as stuff started to release, I mean, I just would buy everything. I had a huge VHS collection. But before VHS, I had even collected Beta. And as early as like 1983, 84, I was buying stuff like Basket Case and Pieces on the Beta, on their original Beta releases. And those were like $80 a piece. So yeah, limited. I was a dishwasher, and in high school. So, but I was a purchaser of those. And of course, Pieces just saw the Blu-ray, the 4K transfer Blu-ray release not too long ago, and it was like $40 for that. And there I was buying it, 30 years ago for, $80. So, and of course, I've got the Blu-ray as well. So the producers of Pieces should be fairly rich if there's more people out there like me who bought it numerous times on all these crazy formats, starting with Beta.
Jim Towns and I, Jim Towns also, I believe, has contributed to this documentary. He and I met in 3rd grade and have been friends ever since. our first experience with shooting movies on video, I believe was October, if I remember correctly, October 16th, 1987. We rented with a guy we knew, Bob Hogue, rented a Sony Beta movie, and Bob wanted to make a Evil Dead sequel, which we had never seen any of the Evil Deads, but after seeing the Evil Deads realized that Bob was just reenacting all of his favorite scenes from the first two Evil Dead movies. But we didn't care. It was our first journey into filmmaking. That Sony Beta movie looked amazing. I wish I had one of those. But that was our first thing, and then I think we both just were, bit by the filmmaking bug at that point. A couple months later, I scoured the classifieds of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette and found somebody selling an old VHS camera, and it was really old. It was one that had the two parts you had to carry along the VHS deck, and you had the camera attached to it with a cord. It weighed about 3,000 pounds. The battery lasted about 15 minutes and then took about 7 hours to charge, so it was not practical. We usually ended up running an extension cord out of the house and sitting the deck in the middle of the yard, and everything had to take place around the deck.
Panasonic introduces a new lightweight video system that's so automatic, it works by itself. The Panasonic video camera focuses by itself, adjusts for changing light by itself, even works in extreme low light all by itself. This Panasonic VHS recorder connects almost by itself and plays back a jitter-free picture in slow motion and stop motion.
But the DSLR away, because it's not needed to make a good movie.
My early days of being a videographer, I was a wedding videographer with the really big cameras that sat ginormously on your arm, and you had to hold it all night long, and you had to lift it up to get the shot, because you always have to get the shot. By the end of the night, my arm would be dead. I could not drive with this arm, okay? Granted, driving's a lot with your foot, but when your car has the gear shifter on this side, it's kind of hard to drive, and you hope you're not stopped by a cop.
There'd be movies, but they're shot now. But with the equipment and effects we have, yeah, I mean, if you put some grain in them, they almost look like something from the 80s. Just with the effects. And people say that all the time to me as a director. They're like, why do your movies look like the fucking 80s? Why don't you just use some depth of field? I'm like, fuck you.
I don't know, I think that we're going to do really well. I think enough time has passed since Blockbuster has closed that it gives the mom and pop stores a chance, to breathe again, to try and give it a second opportunity. A lot of people really miss it, and people that were my age renting movies then are adults now with kids, and they want to have that experience again and introduce their children to renting movies and relive their childhood. And so it's not only good for them, but I mean, it's also really cool for college kids. It's sort of the new vinyl. VHS has kind of come back in a way. A lot of movies are put out on VHS now. There's a lot of collecting. There's a lot of interest again. And I think we cater to a lot of different crowds, and it was a really smart time to do it. I think we're kind of riding the wave, and hopefully we're not the first one to do it in the new era. I'd like to think that maybe we're paving the way, that if we prove to be successful, that other video stores will take note and open up and give it a chance like I did.
I went to School of Visual Arts in Manhattan, 1994, class of 98, New York City, and I would be editing with VHS 3/4 inch, Beta 16 millimeter. We also shot on high 8, which was all the rage when it started going out.
For video reliability and performance, trust VCRs built by Hitachi. Look at Hitachi's warranty. A full 24 months on parts at no extra cost, double the competition. Hitachi precision engineers the Luminar video with the latest and extra durable space-age materials. Better engineered, best warranty. Hitachi, science for the senses.
Some of my all-time favorite tapes are the film trauma tapes, the ones I put out, which are The Legend of Boggy Creek. This is, the 1972 classic. Comes with a poster and a lobby card set and a cool red label, because everything should have a red label. What else? Dawn of the Dead on VHS on special red tape. Comes with a bunch of extras. Smells like plastic. And of course, you can't go wrong with another zombie classic, Necrophiles. This one comes on a green tape because why not?
So showing off some of my nice picks of my collection, I'll start with actually one of my own films. This is more of a recent. It was 2010, this one. This is the original videotape release I did of Easter Bunny Bloodbath. This one actually is quite rare because it has an early cut of the film. I personally worked to get this one put out on our own videotape. We did sales. We did 100 copies of this one. It did sell very well. But again, this one is very rare because it's an earlier cut of the film. Not my favorite cut. I think we got a definitive one later, but this one is a quite rare tape.
Scarlet Fry's Horrorama, which is the first movie I ever made, which was actually, I put out about 60 of these in the 80s, and there's only one that I know of that survives, and it was in Scarecrow Video, which now belongs to a fellow collector. But to finally get like legit distribution, and they actually did a really cool package. They put a little lobby card, had me autograph it, and it came with a poster. So how many people could say they have a poster of themselves? So that was awesome.
It's nice to see the physical copies of things, to have it in your hand and tangible. You can look at the art.
So VHS for me kicked off, my first ever experience was actually in a hotel in a jungle in Indonesia, and my parents dragged me there on holiday. A really weird place, like a 5-star hotel in the middle of a jungle, and we got to the bar, and there was a Hammer film, The Seven Golden Vampires, playing there. I think it was VHS, it might have been a Betamax. This was like 1980, so yeah.
You can stick with Betamax.
But that was it really. That's the first time I'd seen anything that bloody and extreme, because being a home video release in 1980, there was no censorship on it at all, so there was all the blood and boobs, and that kind of freaked me out completely. My family were attacked by leeches the next morning, so that kind of cemented my horror love at the tender age of 8.
I think probably one of the hardest parts of collecting these tapes isn't necessarily that some of them are so hard to get a hold of. It's just trying to explain to other people who aren't interested in it quite why you do it. You know, I sometimes I have some of these tapes turn up at work, and my other work colleagues would be like, well, you know, why are you buying VHS tapes still? And it's like, well, you know, I'm only after certain types of ones, these ones which are like pre-certificates, and they formed a list, and they're like, well, what list? And it's like, well, there was a list by the Department of Public Prosecutions that came up sort of towards the end of 1983, 1984, and it was certain films to be prosecuted, and now some of them are really rare and really hard to get hold of, and you know, I'm trying to collect all 39 that are on the list, and it's like, well, why would you want to do that? But to me, it's kind of like, it's the same as sort of antique collecting, really, isn't it? It's like you're trying to keep hold of something which isn't really available anymore, and it's kind of part of film history, really.
In about 83, I think 83, beginning of 84, we got our first VHS player. I don't think it was a recorder, I think it was just a player that we had, one of the big top loading ones, and there was a couple of shops that had opened up in my area, and sort of as a family we started getting them out on Fridays and Saturdays, and I was allowed my one choice, and it sort of started off with fantasy films, a lot of the Italian exploitation fantasy films, like the Deathstalker type films.
My brother used to have to hire those out from, which was Blockbuster, which was Star, but I think it was Ritz at the time, or was it Hollywood Video? But yeah, my brother used to go down and hire them out for me. Obviously I was too young, loved barbarian films, absolutely loved them.
And again, it was like quite booby as
Yeah.
well. And yeah, at that age, I was already sort of taking an interest in that side of things. But I think the first kind of really extreme film that I saw was this film that was called Superstition, or The Witch. It was, I think it ended up on the banned list, but I saw an uncut copy.
At Blockbuster, we believe that everyone should be able to take home the film they want. That's why we promise to have more copies of the latest films than ever before, so you can take home any one of this week's new releases or rent it free next time. Blockbuster, bringing entertainment home.
We kind of double as like a museum as well as a video rental store because of our collection that we have, all the different rare horror movies and things that you just won't find on Netflix and Hulu. People come in here for, you know, big box horror movies, stuff that, you know, you've never even heard of or was only available in other countries. You can come and get at our store for $1 a day. I mean, nothing beats that. It's been tough for a lot of the horror collectors that come in and they want to buy all my horror tapes, but, you know, if I did that, I wouldn't have the stuff to offer, and that's kind of what draws people in for us. The new releases do really well, but definitely our bread and butter is the horror movies. I mean, people have been coming in from all over to rent our movies, and it's been pretty great meeting a lot of different horror fans and hearing what they like and what they don't like, and just getting to know a lot of really cool new people.
My dad used to run a video hire shop, so those old mum and pop shops, I lived in one. It was a sideline business for him, and he had all the classics. He had Howling, he had Ghoulies, he had Madman, which are still free films to this day. They freak me out because they always said you can watch what you want, but if you have nightmares, don't blame me. And Ghoulies, oh god, I've got it on DVD now, and if I watch it or look at the cover, going to the toilet, I still have issues with. Yeah, it's freaked me out, absolutely freaked me out.
Some of my memories, though, I remember that when I was preteen, you know, between like 10 and 13, my mother and I had this project, ongoing project, where whatever movie we'd rent, we'd record it onto a blank VHS tape. And I specifically remember doing it with The Dead Zone with Christopher Walken. I don't remember why I remember doing it with that movie. Maybe I think I was sick and I rented it and watched it several times. Whatever the reason may be, that was that's when I remember, is recording The Dead Zone onto a blank VHS tape.
Look at me. Do you like what you see? Good. Because it's not me. It's a recording of me on new Memorex videotape. This remarkable tape has been recorded and re-recorded 100 times, but I bet you still couldn't tell if it was Memorex or me, which really isn't me. It's Memorex. New Memorex videotape. Even after 100 recordings, you'll wonder, is it live or is it Memorex?
Standout memories in a video store. Oh yeah, I have many memories in the video. I lived in a video store in my youth. That was just the thing. Video was the rage, whether it was beta. I was in one of the first beta-only video stores that rented primarily horror titles and pornography, of course, way back, even when I was in high school. And those were like the staples when beta was, you know, first coming into play. But man, I have so many good memories of renting movies, discovering new ones, discovering the ones that I've been reading about in magazines for the last 5 or 10 years before they would hit video, like Last House on the Left, Maniac, Dawn of the Dead, all those great titles. I would find out the release dates, the day and date releases, and I would call the owners and they would reserve the title for me, so I would, you know, have them behind the counter waiting. The minute they were released, whether I got out of school or work or whatever it was, I'd be racing to video stores all over the place trying to catch up with things that were released, like the Toxic Avenger, or, you know, any numerous Troma releases, or again, anything that was really classic coming out that had not seen release. And I was there when all of it was actually released for the first time on beta and VHS, so it was just an incredible experience after, you know, becoming a horror fan, probably, and like, you know, a diehard horror slasher type Maniac fan. And probably when I saw Halloween in 1978, the poster and then on the TV broadcast, and then being able to finally rent all these movies and see them uncut for the first time on Beta and VHS was just incredible. Dirty Harry compared to the TV version, Halloween even compared to the TV version, you know, seeing it on Beta for the first time and then being able to buy the VHS later was just incredible going into these stores. And the owner always had a popcorn machine going and a big pipe in his mouth, and you could talk to him about movies and, you know, all the stuff that was going on. So just really, really wonderful experience, you know, socializing with other renters while you're in the stores and perusing the aisles, discovering new things, and timidly going up with a box art of something like I Spit on Your Grave, going, you know, putting it on the counter there, and the owner just rents it to you with no problem.
Some of my memories from watching videotapes and going to the video stores back in the day, we would get together. When I say we, myself and many other people my age at that time, teenagers, okay, and we would have 3 and 4 and 5 new horror films to watch, and man, it was great. It was great. It would usually go out and party a bit, you know, drinking and smoking, not regular cigarettes at that time, and towards the end of the evening, we would all, you know, end up somewhere watching those horror films on videotape.
Well, back in the 80s, bear in mind I was born in 82, so I was quite young when I was watching a lot of these films. I had a little scrapbook, and I used to go to the local video store, get like a little catalogue that had the different VHS tape covers on. And one thing I vividly remember was seeing the artwork for Nightmare on Elm Street 4. And remember absolutely loving it, so I cut that out.
And some of the covers that had nothing to do with the actual...
You found
it
often that the covers had another version of the cover on the other side, so if you opened up the sleeve you could see. So there would be one with an artist's impression and the other one with actual clips from the film.
Yeah.
So you could quite often go, that looks fantastic, just check what the other version is. Alright, never mind.
Video store memories. Yeah, I have a lot, actually. Pretty much grew up in a video store, but we had at least a half a dozen stores near us, and every one of them had different movies. And this was before Crotchbuster and Holly Wang Video, so some of the stores were tiny. I mean, like living room sized. Some collectors I know have more tapes than some of those old stores did. A lot of the times the owner was working behind the counter and he knew the movies. You could tell the guy, hey, what's that movie with? And then he'd be like, oh yeah, that's this over here, and take you to it. Those were pretty great days.
You knew the people who owned the stores. You basically frequented a store in specific. Usually you found the one you liked, and they grew to know you, and they knew your tastes. In my case, they knew that I loved horror films.
But I know back in the 80s I used to quite often go to a local video store and I'd buy ex-rental VHS tapes, and I had a whole collection of them, mostly horror. I had a whole host of Arnold Schwarzenegger films as well as the entire back catalogue of Bruce Lee movies. I did speak with my mother though recently, because I would have been quite young when I first started watching VHS tapes, and she said that the first film that I would have been there to watch on VHS was actually Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
If we were driving around and we saw a new video store, we'd go check it out the following weekend. Didn't matter.
We used to go every day. It would be £1 to rent.
Yeah.
Or something like that.
I don't know, okay, yes, yeah.
They had an A4 sheet of paper on the wall, written on what was coming out, what had just come out. And every day I would look at that. It would never be. I used to wait weeks for it because I only had one copy in, because it wasn't like Blockbusters or Ritz Video or Global Video or whatever. And you know, I just used to rent out cartoons and stuff like that. But fortunately, my parents used to rent for us like Predator, RoboCop, and things like that, as long as I didn't repeat the swearing, and I never did in front of them.
One of the stores by my house had this bright red carpet in it, and it always smelled like mold in there. And it's weird because I always got nosebleeds in that store. And that's really weird because that's the only time I've ever had nosebleeds. That was also the only video store in the area that had the original Truth or Dare tape, so that was a reason to go there, regardless of nosebleeds or not.
I think my standout memory for VHS would have to be the first time my brother brought home Dario Argento's Suspiria. Because, we'd never experienced anything like that. We were just kids, we were like 12 to 13, and suddenly we were putting on this amazing Italian operatic vision from this director whom I came to love, called Dario Argento. And, in Ireland, especially at that time, you would have experienced nothing like that. There was also a great deal of censorship in Ireland at the time, so you were looking at a cinema that was either strictly 18s and there was no chance of getting into it as a young teenager, but also the VHSs that you got were strictly limited in Ireland too. So when suddenly we saw this incredible film by Dario Argento, and it was the dubbed version, which kind of added an extra eerie quality to it. It was just, I don't know, I never forgot it, and from that moment forward I had this huge love of Italian cinema, which has never waned in any way, shape or form. So thank you, Dario Argento.
The Toxic Avenger is a movie that, as a kid, I remember the cardboard cutout in the rental store, how awesome it looked. And I remember I seen that with my uncles when I was really young. And I remember being like, having my mind twisted by the fact that like the monster was like the good guy in the movie. I thought that was really weird. And I vividly remembered being a kid, the scene where he takes the girl and he sits her on like the steam room coals. And that whole like leading up to it, coming down the hall, like that weird segment. And I didn't know the name of it. And then later in life, I seen it on USA's Up All Night, and that kind of put it together for me. And then I had to go get it to fully watch it.
So, wild stories of VHS. I grew up with videotape. I grew up in video stores. I used to think that when I got married, I would probably have to do it in a video store. We would walk down the aisle, down the drama. We would maybe curve over in the comedy and end up in the horror section, and that's where we'd say our vows. Well, it didn't happen. I did get married, but no way in hell my wife was going to do it in a video store. Anyway, but, growing up in video stores, living in video stores, essentially going every day to get new movies and old ones, you really got a feel for the selection. And pretty soon, within, just even a month or two, you would totally rent out a store. You would have all the titles that they had in the stock that you would just have rented. So you'd have to go from one video store to the other. And I had memberships all across the place, different towns. I would take like 40-minute, subway transit to get one place to get to another video store.
The Shining was the first horror VHS that I ever owned. That I actually personally went out and bought. I guess my uncles got me into horror movies and VHS. When I was younger, me and my mother lived with her brothers and sisters and her mother. And my uncles, her brothers, were pretty wild teenagers. So they showed me a lot of like crazy movies when I was younger. Like I Spit on Your Grave, I seen very young. The Wall, Pink Floyd's The Wall, I remember seeing really young. House, Motel Hell. I have vivid memories of all these movies.
One of my fondest VHS memories is a bunch, but one of the ones that stick out is like the time I got this right here when I found Deadly Prey. It's like about over a year ago at some little mom and pop shop up in the LA area. I was looking around, asked the gentleman that owned the shop, hey, you guys got any tapes in the back? And he pulled out a bunch of boxes of VHS, like about 7 or 8 of them. And he said, and I was looking through them and I found some pretty cool things. But in the last box, he's like, you know what, I got one more box in the back. And he went in the back and he found like this little small crumpled up box. And he pulled out the box. And I was like, "There's all this." I didn't think nothing much would be in it because the box looked all tore up. But inside the box, I opened it up, and I saw this on the top. Deadly Prey. I was like, "Holy crap! No way, Deadly Prey." This was only $1 right here, only at $1, and this tape goes for like $80 to $100.
I'll tell you, I remember being gutted about when you rented a movie out. Could you imagine getting it home and somebody hasn't rewound the tape?
Oh yeah, aye.
And you had to put it in the video and you had to rewind it and you couldn't watch it straight away. And then there was the other time where it got played and played and played because it was rental, and when you got it back, the screen was with the lines. Yeah, and you had to either track it or it wouldn't always work, and then you had to take it back and get, it was
It was the dirt one that people just didn't. Some people just didn't look after them.
Yeah, didn't clean the video. That's because you had the videotape head cleaners that you could put the liquid in and put in and play it for so long, like 5 minutes, and then that was annoying.
Well, there's actually two things that really stand out when I think back on the VHS area. The first is walking into the video store as a kid and the bombardment of imagery. The distributor could only sell the damn movie with their artwork, so usually it went all out when it came to nudity or explosions and maniacs with chainsaw, etc. And the second thing is that really stands out is this whole air of verboten video had. It was so many people that really hated this format and took every opportunity they had, and believe me, they had a lot of them. They were allowed a lot of space in this country to spew their vitriol about the format and the low culture it offered. So imagine, an impressionable kid seeing the imagery, the tantalizing imagery, and then hearing, the people in the know telling you that, well, this is really bad for you. Come on, as a kid, you're there, it's like, this is the best thing ever, it looks cool, and if it pisses off your parents, what else do you want?
My favourite ever film of all time, Killer Clowns from Outer Space. Cut behind me, toilet behind me, absolutely love it. There was a scene in that where the things came out, the popcorn, that thing came out the toilet, and it completely fucking spat me out because it reminded me of Ghoulies, because Ghoulies really threw me sideways as a kid. And then I just couldn't hack it, and because of that, it stuck in my mind. And then when VHS stops, they used to have these big mum pup shop sites shutting down, and Blockbuster kicked in, had massive sales, and there's this massive shop, and it was there for like $5 or something, which even back then was ridiculously cheap for VHS. So I bought Killer Clowns from Outer Space, and that sort of just started my I think I was only about 14, 13 at the time. But then I started thinking, I can start collecting things. That's when the collector gene started kicking in. Because before, when your parents buy your toys, you don't really collect stuff. But when you're that age, you can pick what you want to buy. You don't have to bug your parents. And then I started going to places like Camden, and Camden was this magical world of back streets and dodgy copies of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which at the time was then completely illegal. That's what's really kicked off the collection thing. It was Killer Clowns from Outer Space kicked. My fear of Ghoulies transferred to Killer Clowns from Outer Space and a closed down mum and pup shop is why I have such a massive VHS collection.
I remember going round and my cousin had got a hold of, he'd rented this tape when everybody was copying them in those days. And I had seen some before, but he had a copy of E.T. And this was a few months before it came out at the cinema. I went back to school saying, I've seen this film E.T., it's great. And they're going, oh yeah, I haven't heard of it. A couple of weeks later, everybody else had seen it as well. Oh, I was nearly crying. For a 10-year-old boy to say that, it was quite...
Well, I can't say it was a favorite as a kid because it scared the bejesus out of me. Mausoleum, most definitely one of the among free titles. the first horror movie I ever saw. This one pretty much traumatized me. It's the transformation scene in the bathroom. Jesus, that one really scared me. Found it in a thrift store years later, and well, it doesn't quite hold up. But it's totally worth watching for if you appreciate cheese, Wisconsin-sized cheese, I guess. We'll have a good time, Mrs. Nomad. Good time.
I asked my dad. I saw a preview for Superman, and I says, "Oh, you know, Dad, can you get me Superman on video to watch because I really want to see it." So my dad, being my dad, I wasn't with him at the time. Went to go rent out Superman. Come back. I thought, oh, great, you know, put the videotape in. What came up? A film called Superman, about some karate people. Not Superman, the superhero. And I'm like, what do you call this? You know, and I was absolutely gutted just because I wanted to watch it with Christopher Reeve and see the movie.
My standout VHS memory. I remember years ago going to my local library and renting The Evil Dead, the original. I wanted it on DVD, but they only had it on VHS, so I brought it home to put it into my player and onto my TV and made some popcorn, and to my surprise I enjoyed it, seeing it on VHS format, because the quality was so intense, so real. I saw it later on DVD and realized the VHS aspect captured the realism of the movie. It's also one of my favorite horror films of all time.
Yeah.
I think the first VHS I bought probably only pocket money when I was a kid. I was trying to think of what it would be, because if I got a VHS, if I got a film, it was always for my birthday or Christmas. But one I see it for was The Return of Optimus Prime after Transformers movie. I think that might have been the first VHS I ever bought.
Although I now have it on DVD as well, but a movie that I owned and watched endlessly as a kid, animated, was Transformers the movie. The tagline was "Beyond Good, Beyond Evil," and it was. That movie was like mind-blowing, and it was so dark. It's like you just never see that in a cartoon. Like, it actually freaked me out when I was a kid, because I'm like, is there robots in space that could come and eat the Earth? Like, that's like a type of fear that a kid shouldn't have. But like, that movie instilled that in me. Here it is. Imagine that.
When you've got the banned ones, it's like, why is it banned? I must see it. So then you must have Necromantic 1 and 2 because they're illegal. Oh my god, they're fucking dead people. What the hell? So then your collector thing starts going crazy.
Yeah.
You've got to have the next little thing, the next tweak, or the next.
Well, yeah, I mean, I remember at the beginning there was no real sell-through. You just had what was available in the shops to rent, and then as they got sort of worn out or less popular, the shop owners would sort of just sell them off. And there was a market across the road from me, Saturday Market, and they had a bunch of tapes there that would sort of revolve, and new ones would get added to the pile every week. But there was a couple of guys that were basically doing rental from a stall, so you paid in £1.50 or what it was, and every time you took a tape away it was 50p, so it was actually super cheap and affordable for me. And then any tapes that I really liked, I just kept them, and then I went back and restarted with another £1.50. I think it was like £1.50 or £2.50 if it was something quite new and sought after. But up to that point I'd been doing a lot of trading with my mates at school, and it was all pirate stuff basically, and a lot of it was like trying to hunt down the films that everyone talked about at school, like Driller Killer or Zombie Flesh Eaters, and you just couldn't get them in the shops because by then they'd been pulled out of the shops. So I remember getting Zombie Flesh Eaters, and I was so happy. My mate's uncle did me a copy, and that was just like, I just watched it and watched it and watched it.
Okay, my favorite VHS titles I have any number of. I have The Gates of Hell. I have, naturally, Friday the 13th. Hell Night, Media Home Entertainment. See, here's a great thing about that era of the early 80s. You had so many companies that popped up. Naturally, Paramount have their own line. I mean, you know, anything they released to theaters, they were going to release under their Paramount Home Video line. But you had other companies like Media Home Entertainment, and obviously there was, you know, Paragon, you know, home video. There was Vestron as well. God knows they released one of my other favorites, Pieces. Let's face it, you don't have to go to Texas for a Chainsaw Massacre, but by God, I always say it helps, you know.
Now we've got the Rocky Horror Picture Show, superb. This one is a Pre-cert X-Rental, small box one, original cover art. Look at the cover art on that. Superb. I love the old Graham Humphreys artwork covers that he used to do here. So we've got Nightmare on Elm Street. I think this one is an actual original Pre-cert one we've got there. And one of my favourite pieces of cover art, Spookies. Fantastic, that one.
Analog video, and it just looks beautiful. Oh, Nick Millard, what do we got here? 357 Magnum, baby. Yeah, that's before he kicked into his shot on video stuff. That's a great flick right there. Oh, Shrek, what do we got here? No big ogres. No, we got Shrek, the killer Nazi shot on video movie. That's a great one. Ha, can't go very far on this shelf. Born Killer, that's a Ted Pryor. Yeah, there we go. That's a great one right there too. Gosh, I love those guys. Anyway, let's move it on. Kindred, we've got The Fright Show. Oh, this was great. This actually, I used to rent this copy when I was about 12, this very copy. And when the store was selling out, you know, I came to the person working, I said, I gotta buy this. Yes, sell it to me. And they did, so they sold that to me. Oh yeah, and here's another beauty. I mean, look, it's a Paragon, it's cut, but hell, look at that mongrel, man. That's great. So I've got quite a bit. Junior, that's another one. No Arnold Schwarzenegger. Nope, that's a much better movie. Junior, dabbling in the rape revenge a bit with that one there. Oh, beauty. Victims. That's a great flick. Yeah, Girls in the Desert. I mean, these movies I grew up on, so I don't watch them a lot now. I've got kids, you know, but just to have them here, like these I used to rent those like 15 years ago, and I still got them here. Oh, some newer ones, yeah. Polonia Brothers, Lethal Nightmare. It's the remake of Hallucinations. The original cut of Feeders. This is a nice one. And this stuff is limited. They've got, you know, like right there, 47 of 50, signed by Mark Polonia. Like, that stuff's great. Moving on, this was a nice box cover for it. East End Hustle. Cindy used to be a hooker. Yeah, it's just a great movie. And they just don't make box covers like that anymore nowadays, you know. We've got Blood Shack here, you know, check that out. I know it's all cut there, that's the old Rogers Video logo. I know it's a cut box, but it's still beauties. Like these ones I used to rent, and they're now just sitting here on my shelf. You got the classics. Oh, more beauties here. We got some old school, as they call it, Evil Night, the classic. Yeah, that's a great one. And of course the remake I've got down there, Chris Seaver. Some of these, you know, from the 90s came out. Oh, there we go. And they're just the DVDs transferred to videotape, really. The Anchor Bay releases. Yeah, so I mean, those just kept for the hell of it. Got some Trauma videotapes there. Toxic Avenger, the unrated and R-rated versions. Of course, I got the director's cut too. So those are great. Yeah, Home Sweet Home. This is another beauty that's not on DVD. Thanksgiving Slasher from Media. That's just wonderful. Had a couple copies of this. Sold one a while ago. Howling 7. I think that's one of my most favorites of the Howling series. It just feels so bad. It's great. Reminds me of a shot on video movie, even though it's not. Moving on, we've got a great load up of Vestrons here. I don't know. I just somehow got those Vestrons in order, but there they are. Oh, Last Slumber Party. What a beauty. Yeah, that's a classic. I remember buying this when I came back from a camping trip. What was the price on this? I didn't have it? No, but anyway, there's the sale tag number. But yeah, just a beauty. More Paragons we got here. Dr. Butcher, MD. Medical Deviant. I always liked Savage Weekend. And this is a really old tape. You can tell by the box cover. It's just, this is an original release. Just beauties to have them on my shelf, you know, because otherwise they'd be gone. They'd be in the trash. Mayhem. Not the best movie, but still pretty damn good, and I like the box cover, you know. First it was the child molesters, the dope pushers, and the pimps. Now it's the police. Can he survive? Mayhem! And lots of gory good pictures on that one, you know. Just stuff that isn't even on DVD, never came out. I got a couple Boarding Houses here because I know that this is an original release of Boarding House from the shot on video transfer. And this one, which was a later printing from Paragon, is actually struck from the 35mm master. So it's very interesting to compare the two. Got a lot old Creep in there, yeah. Tim Ritter, yeah. What a beauty in that one there. My Splatter Farm, I got a sealed Saurians. Got that in a nice deluxe package from SRS Cinema. Thank you guys. Skullduggery. You know, great cover. Always love that cover. Original labels there. You know, moving along. Oh, Hollowgate. Yeah, Halloween time, guys. Hollowgate. It's a nice wizard for you. Carnival of Blood. Now this one I haven't even seen yet, but you know, Twiggy W. Starring Twiggy. Werewolf? I don't know. Haven't seen it. This is a great one, actually. Comedy movie. Blue Movies. A couple guys that want to make a porno. Yeah, it's just hilarious. Chris Stone is in this. Dee Wallace, her old husband. Great movie. Boogeyman 2, Pumpkinhead, Blood Rage. A lot of people love Blood Rage. Came out in Blu-ray recently. It's a great new release. It actually was from Blockbuster. You can see there. It was 94 I bought it, eh? Nice.
Okay, so here are a few of my favorite tapes in no particular order. We'll start out with Night of the Zombies. That's a great one. I got a good deal on it. I don't remember even where I got it. I just remember I was like, oh, cool tape. So, Night of Zombies. This one, The Devil Master, aka Demon Lover, is just constantly in my VCR right now. I just can't get enough of this movie. The versions are slightly different. This one has all the gore and less of the hippie partying, and the other one has like extended hippie partying and no gore. It's weird. So between the two, you get a really good version of the movie. Next up is Yeti, the Italian movie where he like is giant and like King Kong sized. This is great. This was really hard to find. I don't remember how much I paid for it. It was, you know, not super expensive because it is slightly trimmed to fit into a smaller clam, but other than that, pretty good. Okay. Here we have one of my all-time favorites. Can you see that's kind of glary? Night of the Demon in a heavily cut box, but Night of the Demon, 1980, the Bigfoot horror movie. Actually, even though this is cut to pieces, I did pay like $50 for it, and that was actually a good deal. This is really rare. Another one good favorite of mine, Bigfoot, 1970. Can't go wrong with this. This is the cool one. You know, actually, I think they're all the same. And my all-time favorite, Dr. Butcher, MD. That's kind of glary, but yeah, Dr. Butcher, MD. This is a really great movie. Though this is cut to fit in a clam, so I got it at a pretty good price, but it is still just a great movie and a great tape. It's got the cool red label on it.
We've got Basket Case, The Evil Dead, Godzilla, Bigfoot, Zombie Holocaust, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. We've got some killer ones here. Now these are the covers I actually have on display. Everyone's got to have Dawn of the Dead. Nightmare City, American Terror, Double. Hancock, Bloody Moon, Graduation. We've got some killer films here. Media, I bloody love Media. Fantastic label. Everyone's got to have Hollywood Chainsaw Hookers in their collection, Deadly Prey. Okay, some other classics here. We've got the Exterminator films. Oh my god, they're awesome.
I started collecting tapes in high school. It was while DVD was coming out, so all the tapes were going on sale. And after school every day I would go to one of the local video stores. There was probably 3 or 4 at the time. And I would just try to buy everything I could out of the horror section. There wasn't really ever anything that rare. It was always stuff like Nightmare on Elm Street or Friday the 13th. Common stuff. But I still had to have everything, and it became obsessive. That was the gateway for me. I never really stopped after that.
I began collecting VHS tapes honestly not that long ago because I grew up with them, and when the world made the switch to DVDs, I was kind of oblivious to the whole aesthetic and vintage aspect of the VHS, the significance of it being one of the first, well, pretty much the first major home video medium.
Oh, I do enjoy an evening with a little light entertainment. But when your video heads get dirty, you lose your picture. Not a pretty sight. Happily, this new Polaroid video cassette will help you. It actually cleans your heads as it plays, so dirty heads needn't haunt you. New Polaroid video cassettes. Get the picture?
Many people have a list, as I found, which I found only from collecting VHS tapes. I'll go into a store or a vendor at a flea market, and I'll have my list with me, and someone will walk in and say, "Oh, you've got a list? I have a list too." Or the owner of the vendor himself will come over and say, "Oh, you've got a list? I have a few more customers with lists." So I guess I'm not alone. I didn't think I was alone. I thought it was a pretty standard thing for VHS collectors.
I don't know whether I would consider the VHS collection I have to be valuable, but to me personally, it's a collection that I would never get rid of, because they're early VHS releases of some of my favorite ghost stories, for example. A Ghost Story for Christmas released by the BBC in the 70s was released by the BFI on VHS. So I was one of the first to go out and purchase those. Also, even have a collection of Charles Bronson films like Cold Sweat, which is an excellent film. And also The Woman in Black, when that was released on VHS after its run on UTV or ITV. That was a must-have, an absolute must-have. And actually I remember at the time I found the VHS itself in a bargain bin, but there was no cover, so I nearly missed it. And then I saw, that's The Woman in Black. And then a couple of weeks later, somebody was throwing out a case for a film, and I looked at it, and it was the case for A Woman in Black, and there was no video in it. So I felt the two were meant to be married. So I took that, and I've held that in my collection ever since. Also films like Nicholas Roeg's Don't Look Now, which would be one of my all-time favourites. In fact, pretty much anything that Nicholas Roeg did, Walkabout being another classic. And even though Walkabout isn't a horror movie, it has horrific elements, and it's a disturbing picture.
My most valuable tape, or how much did I pay? I'm a bargain shopper. I'm thrifty. I'll sit and spend months getting a good deal on a tape. I'm like that. On average, I pay $30 to $50. For me, the most expensive tape I ever bought was probably my Night of the Demons from 1980 box, because I paid $50 for it, and it's cut to shit. But that's actually a pretty good deal, because I don't see them for less than $100 normally. So, yeah, whatever.
I didn't really aggressively start collecting tapes until maybe 6 years ago, and since then I've probably spent something ridiculous, like at least $15,000 on tapes. Somewhere along the way I got into collecting exploitation films, and that led me into collecting adult films, and it's been all downhill from there.
So rare and valuable tapes, I imagine I have a few. From a collector's point of view, I would say America's Deadliest Home Video, which I found for $1 at a Vineland U-Sell flea market in Vineland, New Jersey, right near my hometown. This flick is pretty rare. I did reanimate it with Camp Motion Pictures, so now you can get it. But this original copy is pretty rare.
So, a couple of my prized possession tapes. The first on the list would be Wet Wilderness on VCX. There's only 2 of these known in collector circles, and this is one of them. It's a crazy backwoods slasher, and there's a ski masked killer running around in the woods, raping and torturing people and forcing incest on families, and there's gore, and it's insane. I can't even really explain it that well. I spent $600 on this, and I know that's a crazy price for a single tape, but it's worth every penny as far as I'm concerned. Like I said, there's only 2 in collector circles, and this is one. And there's the other one.
Another is this copy of The Sorcerers on Allied Artists. These tapes are really hard to find. They're just rare, like as a collector point of view. You know, they're just a hard tape to find. But a different kind of rarity for me is stuff like Learn the Easy Art of Needle Tatting with the gatefold sleeve that has an actual needle in it. Now, how many of these do you really think have survived? Who really gives a crap about these tapes? Probably not many, so there's probably not that many of these, and that's a different kind of rarity. And on the same page, how about the eye improvement system home video? I mean, like, what is this? You know what I mean? Like, you ever seen this before? I mean, is this rare? I mean, that makes it rare, I guess. You know, probably many of them didn't survive.
So my second favorite tape is Watercolor on VHL. Unlike Wet Wilderness on VCX, VHL released this several times in different covers and variants. There's several clamshells, there's a big box, there's a small carton, and there's Betamax releases of each. And so I spent $250 on this tape, but I've been trying to get every other tape, and those $250 add up, and I'm at 6 now, and close to $2,000 in on watercolor tapes. But again, I don't really regret that, because this is the only one of these I've ever seen, and I've been keeping an eye out for 4 years now. So yeah, that's waterpower.
And on that tip, how about a video tour of your new Meyer store in Ontario? I mean, like, this is probably pretty rare. How many of these did they make? And who really cares? I mean, who didn't just throw this away? And you got to think, when's the next time you're going to find something like this? And that's the type of rarity that, you know, I'm really interested in, stuff that really wouldn't exist anymore, you know, because it gets thrown away, or, you know, just nobody cares about it. It's not like a collector's piece. It's not like a hot horror tape or like a sexy exploitation tape.
So aside from collecting adult tapes, I've also been collecting copies of I Spit in Your Grave from around the world for about 4 years now. They range from this American tape from Wizard Video to this Israeli tape. This one's cool. I never thought I would own this. I saw one sell for $400 one day, and the next day I found one for $100. And yep, it's copies from South Korea, and there's several countries that released it, and it looks nothing like the actual movie. To copies like this one from Sweden, and it's from a company called Viking Video, which was apparently co-distributed or licensed under Wizard Video. And if you collect tapes from America, you know that Wizard Video is important because they released all the big boxes, and those were some of the flashiest covers that there was in the 80s. And as far as these I Spit in Your Grave tapes go, I've probably got like 40 now. I hate to think about how much I spent on them and how much I'm going to spend on them in the future, because there's only rarer and rarer ones out there. So, but it gives you something to look forward to, finding the new tapes like that.
I love the fact it's kind of, you know, part of history really. It's kind of, you know, these tapes sort of came out sort of 1979, 1980, and were available for, you know, 3-4 years until sort of 1983, 1984 when the VRA Act came in, and so they weren't produced in massive numbers, and now they're just kind of part of history, part of a time when you could go into a video store and pick up a tape and not have to, you know, have ID, and also just go into a video store really.
But I think the most valuable tapes in my collection are the tapes that I had from when I was a kid. You know, my original copy of like All Dogs Go to Heaven, or like The Sandlot, or the home videos of me and my dad, like, you know, roughhousing in the living room, or like playing in the yard, or like my 3rd grade holiday play. You know, those are one of ones.
So again, some of my more rare tapes. We'll just take a quick peek. Now this one is not as rare as we've got, but Blood Lake is a damn classic. In fact, it's one of my most favorite films, perhaps the most favorite film. This I've bought many times. I had a few copies of it, and what I was doing when I was buying multiple copies of Blood Lake was I was creating a composite, because it's not on DVD and I wanted to have the best quality I could get. So I had 2 or 3 different quality copies, and I was taking the video from parts. If there was a video dropout, I'd switch to another copy and use that video. And I took all the sounds, so we've got nice hi-fi quality stereo sound. It just sounds beautiful. Transfer that to a digital copy, and so Blood Lake videotape is one of my most prized possessions. I think the most valuable tape I have right now, because I've sold off so many, is Splatter Farm, the original Splatter Farm. I did pay a pretty penny for this a few years ago, but I'm a Polonia lifer and just had to have it, even though I had already gotten copies of this first edition of the movie, because it's not the same as what's on the DVD. The original video cassette release is just a treasure. It's like I always say, it's kind of like owning a negative of a movie, because it was shot on video, it's on video. Yeah, it's an edited later generation, but to have an original, yeah, I think that's probably my most valuable tape I have right now.
I mean, I quite like this Evil Dead version. You've got the Palace logo on the inside, and I got this off another collector. Other tapes, I think my 2 kind of prize items is SS Experiment Camp, because it's kind of one of the kind of core titles in the whole nasty scandal, and you've got the great kind of cover there with, you know, that the Nazi looking over the woman upside down, and actually this copy is really nice quality. And if you open inside, you've got the original kind of Go video case there, and you've got the kind of gold Go logo on there, and the tape itself is really nice condition. But that I paid £100 for, off of a private seller or through Facebook, which is quite a lot of money. But I think they're kind of worth around about sort of £250 now if you try and get one on eBay. Another tape I really like is Snuff. Another tape I like to own, not actually watch, because it's actually a terrible film. But this was quite a hard one to get hold of back in the day, because as far as I understand, Astra Video, who had I Spit on Your Grave, they had the rights to put this out, and they actually had covers printed up and they had adverts printed up for it. And then for some reason they withdrew it, and they said they weren't going to release it. But shortly after that, tapes came onto the market, and I think the official explanation is there was a underground pirate company or something which were putting these tapes out, but they're very good quality, and I honestly think that the real reason was that Astra put these tapes out themselves. The reason why they didn't put their name on there, and the reason why they kind of left the actual tape itself pretty blank with just the basic sticker on, is they were trying to sort of play on the whole kind of mythology of this being like a real life snuff movie, and you know, and this is like, you know, something you shouldn't have.
This is an original VHS, if you can see it, big box of Nightmare. All right, and I love this cover art because it says clearly on here, you know, that it contains the effects work of Tom Savini. All right, this tagline was later removed because I think there was some disagreement between Tom and the filmmakers as to whether or not he actually applied the effects or just consulted, but it boasted anyway that the film itself and the effects were done, or the effects in the film were done by Tom Savini, when in reality Tom said, no, I was a consultant, but didn't actually do the effects.
Well, I don't. Monetary value has very little to do with my collecting of VHS tapes. There's definitely a limit to how much I'm willing to pay for a tape, and if I don't like the movie, I'm not gonna buy it. I couldn't care less, you know. But I checked around online, and apparently this one is sort of valuable. I don't know. It's an Australian edition, a semi-legit edition apparently, of George Romero's Dawn of the Dead.
Let's just say this one is quite rare. It is the Massacre Up North original release. It's a Canadian shot-on-video slasher. It was funny because it's put out by Rogers Video. They for a while they were doing their own label of releases called the First Rights, and it was meant to be for the independent films, so that the independent films that did not have a distributor at the time, Rogers Video, which was a video store and a cable company, were dabbling in releasing their own video line. So this is from early 2000 release. It's a late 90s shot-on-video slasher, Canadian, Massacre Up North. That's one of the valuable ones.
The most I spent on a VHS is a Korean version of Monster Dog with Alice Cooper. It cost $100, and it's in the mail.
Well, I think this one's kind of nice. It's a double value for me. It's Fart the Movie. Yeah, great flick. You know, it's really interesting though, because, you know, like they say, it's the movie they said could never be made. Well, I guess they caught the fart on camera. But anyway, what's cool about this release is that this movie is actually like 90 minutes long or 80 minutes, something like that. But this release itself is only 30 minutes. It says so right on the back there. It's a 30-minute tape. It's actually a condensed version of the movie. You can see the big wheels there. It only has a little bit of tape. It's a 30-minute long from wavelength video. Now, I kind of had to read about this a bit, but it seems like this version, the 30-minute version, was released straight to the distributors or companies or something, but it was for them to get just basically a condensed version of the movie.
One of my favorite VHS as a kid was, this is one of those ones that I rented so many times. Luckily enough I have a copy of this one. This is a very rare one to find. This is Popple's Funhouse Folly and Other Stories. This is basically the only reason that I love this one, is not just because it's the Popples, is because it has the live action Popples pilot movie that Shelley Duvall produced. And, you know, it was supposed to, I think, be a pilot TV series, and they were going to like pilot it and, you know, and see if they actually continued it on to do a series of this, and it didn't work out or something like that. So they put this on this VHS, and it had this great music, this Popples Magic, Popples Magic. I don't know, as a kid, I absolutely loved this one so much. I would rent this one so many times. This, and one I don't know where it is anymore, was My Pet Monster live action. Like, those two are some of my all-time favorite things to watch. But this one is probably my top favorite one of all time, especially as a kid's, like, rental.
Maniac on VHS. I think I bought this where a video rental store in Cambridge, Massachusetts was going out of business. I think this is one of the films that I bought there, and I only think that because of the price sticker.
First Laserdisc I ever purchased was The Lost Boys. I still have it. I was so excited because I hadn't seen this in the theater. I got to finally see it widescreen, because at that point Laserdisc was the only way to watch anything widescreen. Yeah, this was the first one. I think I ordered the Star Wars trilogy from Columbia House, but that hadn't arrived yet. I drove out to a store and purchased this one just because I had to watch something. I had a Laserdisc player sitting there with nothing to play on it. That can't go on. So I picked up The Lost Boys.
Yes, I can understand you. I'm Leonard Nimoy. Interesting. A record player that produces beautiful sound and pictures through my TV.
One thing that I really loved about Laserdiscs that you really couldn't, I guess I actually never tried, but I don't know that it was as prominent with VHS tapes, but with Laserdiscs it was always fun to look for the import movies alternate versions of movies on import. So one of my favorites is what they called in Japan Captain Supermarket, which was the uncut Army of Darkness. This one was pretty hard to get. I really enjoyed at that point, not that I knew I would enjoy it, but looking back, I enjoyed the fact that it took some effort to get these movies. You know, you couldn't just download it. You couldn't just buy the DVD that had 11 different versions of a movie on it. You had to actually, and you couldn't even look them up on the internet at that point.
At first glance, this player, Magnavision, gives the appearance of a highly stylized record player. However, I notice the absence of a stylus or needle, an optical laser scanner, and Magnavision was the first consumer product in our galaxy to use it. Now that is an entirely new dimension in entertainment.
But yeah, that's one thing I really enjoyed about Laserdisc, was just the effort and the struggle and the research and just all the detective work it took to pick up these unavailable movies in the States on Laserdisc in Japan. I just still have my collection in my room with all my stuff, so it's not, I don't think it's in any danger. I didn't stuff it in a garage or something. Laserdiscs, they don't get mold, but they do get what's called disc rot, which is a rust that develops between the layers of the disc if it wasn't airtight when they glued them together, and that you can do nothing about. That is dreaded, and that will ruin a disc. It looks like little colored blips that just go all over the screen. It's a nightmare. Once that happens, you're done. I had heard that you have to play your discs at least once a year because it redistributes the glue inside when they heat up and start spinning. I don't know how true that is. Did not have time to play every one of my discs once a year.
So, VHS was a big part of my life for about, I guess, 10, 12 years, something like that. And then, of course, we had Laserdiscs came out, but I never really...
No, I never got Laserdisc.
It was just way out of my sort of price range. And most of the stuff that I really wanted to get hold of never really came out. It was only seemed to be the bigger films, like, I don't know, Aliens or something like that.
Yeah. Pretty much anything on DVD was going to be printed and printed and printed, with obviously some major exceptions, but for the most part, they're still being made. VHS tapes, again, with some exceptions, are not being made anymore. What is out there is what is out there. There's nothing else being fed into the pool, into the population. So if you find a VHS tape, it's one of a limited number. And for some reason, that attracts me. There's something about it. Whereas a DVD, if I buy, you know, a copy of Friday on DVD, and then I buy the other million or so copies out there of Friday, they're going to make more. Or they'll make Blu-rays, but they're still making DVDs, so they're going to make more of them. And that makes it so that owning Friday isn't that special. Because, truth be told, I'll never watch most of these movies again. Why? Because my 1,500 movie long, you know, movies to see list is going to keep growing faster than I can rewatch movies that I love.
You will find a selection of coming attractions available on the VRO network labels.
There's a lot of films, and I think Might It Lie was one which was one of the first, if I remember, I could be wrong here, one of the first found footage of the recent period, where they kind of took the whole Big Brother thing, and I didn't like it until the end, and then once the end hit, I got it and was like, that's fucking amazing, and then I loved it. So with Netflix, and that sort of, because they're so bloody, even Love Film, which I love and I use because, you know, it's cheap and it's efficient and it's easy. And I'm a film person, I'll really try and, because, you know, we make films ourselves and people have slagged off my films, some people have loved them, some people hate them, it's like, but I know how much effort I've put in them, so I know how much effort someone else has put in, so I feel I should at least give the film its entire chance. So when you've got the disposableness of it, you sometimes you don't. And
I think because of that, a lot of people, a lot of my friends when I ask them what they watch, they just watch series.
Yeah.
Because it's easier, because they don't want to sit there and sort of go through the first 2 minutes of each film before they decide. If they know, you know, whatever series, whether it's Dexter or whether they know that they kind of like that,
Yeah.
and they don't want to think about it, so that's what they put on, and they just watch one series, and when that finishes, they watch another one.
Yeah.
They don't really watch films that much on Netflix. That's generally what the sort of people give me as like feedback. I mostly watch DVDs and Blu-rays still, like, but we do use Netflix. My partner particularly likes Netflix, but I often find that there's nothing that I really want to watch on it.
Quality is fantastic on Blu-rays, but I'm unamused at yet another technological advance in media. You know, when VHS is as good is fine with me. I like the rawness of it. I like how it's a little bit dated. You know, why keep printing the same things over and over and over that are just a little bit better each time? I mean, obviously it's for money, and frankly, I have no desire to get Blu-rays, to watch Blu-rays.
So the point being, this whole intangibility thing brings us back to VHS and why we collect them. Because we've gone from big chunky things to nothing. So I think that's where VHS lies now. Why we still collect it, because we like going back to the days which it was an adventure. Going to the shop and looking through those rows and rows and rows. And trying to like, look at the horror ones and the ones with horror tits on the front, which you're not meant to look at with your parents, or when you're a bit older with your missus, and you're kind of like just trying to say there's a whole thing to it which you don't get now. And I think that's what a lot of collecting is. Whether people collect antiques or anything, you're harking back to something you enjoy, and that was such an enjoyable experience. I think holding the VHS, you are getting that again.
Exactly, picking up some of I've still got some of the big box soft cover ones, you know, a bit squidgy.
Clamshells?
Clamshells, that's it. And you know, when you open that up, and inside you've got the stamp of the video shop over the film title label and all of that. It's just, they're so beautiful. And you know, if you do have the space to display them, I think they're just valid works of art, because as you said, the posters are incredible. You generally very rarely get real posters on films nowadays. I mean, there are a few sort of genre famous artists like Graham Humphreys.
Okay, here's a VHS phenomenon no one's ever been able to explain to me to my satisfaction. Frickin' clamshells. Like, certain companies didn't believe in the same cardboard cases that everyone else was shipping out their VHS tapes in. No. These guys, their stuff is so precious, they have to develop this technology of this like padded plastic kind of case thing to send their stuff out in. Unfortunately, this case is about 1.27 times the size of a normal VHS tape. So you know what? It's not fitting on your shelf, kids. Sorry.
My strangest VHS memory has to be as a young boy, when Poltergeist and E.T. hadn't yet been released in Irish cinemas. A friend of the family decided to go up to this place in Tala, which is a suburb in Dublin, and he decided that he was going to get us a surprise, and he knocked on this door. The guy behind the door didn't open the door, but he responded and he said, "What are you looking for?" And the friend of the family said, "E.T. and Poltergeist." So he was instructed to put some money through the letterbox, and then he was passed out these 2 blank VHS tapes. And when we got them home, to our shock and, you know, incredible surprise, it was Poltergeist and E.T. So we got to see them pretty much before nearly anyone else in Ireland in the early 80s. So that probably is the strangest experience I would have had with VHS. You know, there's been other odd experiences, but I think that tops them all.
One of the most bizarre situations I was ever thrust into for finding VHS tapes, probably, me and my girlfriend found this ad on Craigslist, and they said they had a bunch of adult VHS titles. And I don't really collect adult titles, but I have a lot of friends that do. And so we decided to go check it out. So we get to this, you know, 2-story house in suburbia, you know, fairly like rich looking house, and they open the door, and it's just like 2 kind of harmless looking, like middle-aged people, you know, very like normal looking people, and it's already like, that's kind of weird. So like we walk in and they are having like a pseudo estate sale, and like everything in their house is marked with like little post-it notes, and they have prices on little post-it notes, and you know, they're trying to sell us like a cookie jar and like a whole fireplace and stuff like that. So finally we get to the porno, and they have like 20 banana boxes, like boxes like this big, full of big box porno, and it's all like from the later era, like 80s and 90s. And we're going through it, and like as we're going through it, you can just like feel the embarrassment in the room, and they're just like super uncomfortable, and they're like sitting there like biting their nails as we're going through it, and we're not really feeling it or whatever. Like, you know, there wasn't much anything we really wanted there. And at the end of it, they were like, "Are you sure you can't take any of it?" And they like just seemed like desperate to get rid of this porno, like it was just like dirt or blood on their hands, and they were just like so embarrassed to have it. And the whole vibe was just kind of bizarre and kind of funny. Really nice people, but man, it was just weird and really funny. So yeah, porno at the suburban white people's houses was pretty weird.
Actually, I have a funny story about naughty VHS tapes. In college, a buddy of mine found a girlfriend finally. Love the guy, Vinny the Mouse. He's a very tiny guy, very short, very thin, wonderful guy. Met this really tall, beautiful woman. She dwarfed him in every way. Love at first sight. Unfortunately, though, he had a extensive porn collection. She did not agree with the porn collection, so he had to get rid of it. He was stashing it in friends' places because he wasn't sure. They had only been dating a couple of months. So he stashed his porn collection with a bunch of different friends. I was one of them. And I found myself in the possession of the Ass Master. Thanks, Vinny.
So collecting tapes has gotten me out of my house and brought me to some pretty strange places. Two stories that happened in the same day. We were in New York hosting a screening of Desperate Teenage Love Dolls, and our friend Matt from Horror Boobs decided that he wanted to take us out to look for tapes at the old porn stores near 42nd Street in Times Square. And the first few stores we went to, we didn't really find much, and we were buying stuff just to buy stuff and say we bought stuff. But the third place we went to, we went upstairs because that's where they kept all the tapes, and the guy that owned the place didn't really tell us what else was upstairs, but there was lap dance booths, and there was probably like 12 of them, and there was these girls that were walking around naked, and they were bringing guys in to get lap dances while we were looking for tapes, and they'd be walking past us to have cigarette breaks on the fire escape. It was pretty weird. The second story is kind of weirder. We went to another porn store, and we asked if they had tapes. The guy that owned the place said, "Oh yeah, we get a lot of tapes, but they're in the basement, and we're only gonna let 2 of you down there at a time." So Matt and I decided that we'd go downstairs, and all the tapes were in these giant, like, industrial-sized trash bags. And the guy that brought us downstairs kept on saying not to look around, don't look around. And I noticed that there was probably a dozen racks of VHS duplicators running, and they were duplicating some pretty interesting porn while we were digging around through tapes. And we actually found some good stuff that day in that place. There was big boxes and rare kung fu shit, and it was worth being in a nasty basement with gross Japanese porn playing.
So my strangest VHS memory is probably when I was a kid and I walked into the small indie video store, and there it is, eye level with me, the Continental big box for City of the Walking Dead. Now, if you don't know what that is or what I'm talking about, let me explain. The cover of the box is a still from the movie, and it's this naked chick with her eye gouged out. So here I am, this pubescent kid, and I'm seeing this, and it's totally weirding me out with this mix of like sexuality and repulsion. So every time I was in that video store, I'm staring at that box, just kind of trying to figure it out, trying to figure out how I feel about it. Personally, I think it traumatized me a little.
Now, when it comes to strange VHS memories, one thing I always remember was kind of weird was how VHS used to be released. When when the things used to come out, like now when a movie comes out, if it's a new release, it comes out to, Redbox, DVD, Blu-ray, you can buy it everywhere on Amazon, everywhere you can get stuff, it comes out the exact same time. When VHS first was coming out, you used to have to actually go and rent it first. That was the only place you could get it. So it was always a weird thing, because like I always, me, loved to have the tapes and loved to have the collection, so it was always, for me as a kid, always such a strange thing that you would have to wait another like 6 months to a whole year to actually buy the movie, when it actually, because like I said, you could rent it first, but you could not buy it. So as a kid, it used to always drive me crazy, and if you really, really had to have it right when it first came out, it would be like $110, something like that, to buy it right away.
Well, I got into a fight once in a video store with the clerk after renting a Swedish horror movie or slasher. God bless him. Well, basically, I demanded a refund, and the guy refused to. I was furious. I'm kind of big on bad movies, or I'm a huge Ed Wood fan, and I like Troll 2, but this one was awful, and I demanded my money back. And the guy finally just got tired of me and told me, sure, you can have your money back, but does this work the other way around, so you're willing to pay double if you rent something you really like? And for like a millisecond you just go, no, god damn it. So he kind of won that argument, but yeah.
So that was always a very strange thing for me, as well as, back then too, before you could go on the internet and you could look things up, I didn't know things were coming out. So like some of my favorite things, like some of the Ernest movies, I used to kind of just discover they were out when I went into the video rental place. And that was the kind of thing that was kind of cool about renting movies as a kid. You didn't know what was out until you actually got to the video rental store. Now you kind of know, you can look on, websites and see upcoming new releases, and you can go on the digital bits and see cover arts and things like that, or things that are actually coming out. But back then, the cool thing was going into the video store every Friday, because that's when I used to always go as a kid, and actually go in there and see what new things were out in the shelves. And it was actually an experience to go, oh yeah, what is this movie? And you kind of were discovering things way more than now. There's not as much discovery with movies.
It's funny, I think Palace Pictures and Palace Video had to be the most exciting, because when the logo came up, it appeared on the at the opening of the film, you always knew you were in for something really exciting, and some of the best films like Evil Dead appeared on the Palace label, and for some reason every time we got a copy of a Palace release, it always seemed to be I don't know, it always looked as though it would never play. And then suddenly, I can't remember what it's called, the tracking system. When that kicked in, then suddenly the DVD or the video played, because so many people would have rented a Palace Pictures release. So by the time you got to it, in our local video store, there would have been, a lot of people booking out certain types of films, Evil Dead being, the main one of the Palace releases that everyone wanted to see at the time. And it was just, I don't know, it was always quality. I think Palace Pictures, they only really acquired the very best that came in from America, or in fact terrestrially in the UK. So it was just always an exciting experience.
I don't know, I have so many great memories associated with so many companies. I mean, the logo would come on and kind of set the mood, and you knew you were going to see something you probably shouldn't be seeing. And I mean, some of the logos themselves are pretty spooky. But for me, it's kind of a tie between Gorgon, because I mean, that logo is probably one of the best ever. Plus they released Night of the Bloody Apes, which is probably one of the best movies ever. And then Embassy, because they released Phantasm, which is definitely one of the greatest movies ever.
So, my favorite distributor for videotape. I've had to think about this because there's been a lot. I really just, there's great films, and you see one, you start to see other ones on the same label, and you realize right away, oh, these guys, whoever's releasing this on this label must be really having a good idea because they're putting out great flicks one after the other. So, there's obviously my favorites, but I would have to say when it comes to videotape, my deep down 100% favorite company is Paragon Video. Yeah, it's Paragon. And it's everything. It's the way that the star field opens up, the way the music comes in, the way just the Paragon comes with the many layers of Paragon behind it. Just everything about it is it's so over the top. And it's so hard set on early 80s. It knows it's getting into a new field video. Nowadays you look at it and it's almost cliched the way it's so electronic and over stars and the almost a Superman effect to it. But Paragon, their output was just wonderful. Paragon did a smart thing, which is probably why I love it so much, is that not only did you have their opening logo, but then they ran 15 minutes worth of other trailers before their own movie.
Another one here, The Butcher. Superb little film. Films like Cannibal Ferox, some of the old video nasties. Brilliant title, super. You've got to have these in your collection. Pieces, one of my all-time favourite films. Pre-cert Pieces. Brilliant. Now these pre-certs like this, Videodrome and stuff like that, they were small box, not big box, but really a valid addition to anyone's collection. These ones here. One of my favourite all-time distributors has got to be Wizard. I love their huge big box. They're like bloody tombs. I would say probably Media and Wizard are my two favourite all-time bloody distributors. Both these boxes are literally so heavy. Look at this. Oh, there we go. Superb. So my two favourite distributors are Wizard Video and Media.
Some of my favorite VHS distributors, Midnight Video, they had the best big boxes. They put out a lot of the Herschel Gordon Lewis movies, Microwave Massacre. I love Vestron, Lightning Video, Gorgon, all that stuff. But I would have to say my favorite one is probably Vestron because of the amount of titles they had, and I have so many memories with all those movies.
What does VHS mean to me? Well, VHS is happiness. I discovered almost all of the movies that I love by first seeing them on tape. I've always loved movies, and I'd rather watch a low-budget movie with heart than a giant Hollywood flick made by producers trying to appeal to the largest demographic so they can make $1 billion worldwide. VHS is the complete opposite of that. It's awesome art, it's discovery, it's taking a chance on something new, sometimes running a movie twice because you got fooled by an alternate version or, retitle. The days when VHS was king, even if something sucked, you could still have fun talking about how shitty it was. Unlike now, when you finish a movie and 20 minutes later you forget you've ever even seen it.
And my daughter, my 5-year-old daughter, who's turning 6 soon, knows how to work a VCR.
Honestly, VHS changed my life. I don't think that I would be where I am without the hobby and without the subculture surrounding it. I've traveled so much because of tapes. I've met so many people because of tapes. I've gotten into filmmaking myself, which has been a goal of mine since I was little. It's crazy to think that something that so many people think is obsolete and people throw away could do so much for someone. And so I'm grateful for that.
Why I really like VHS is because to me, when I think of childhood, when I think of, back to as being a kid, I think of VHS.
I love VHS! VHS lives! Look in here, I got boxes. I got like 4 or 5 boxes just filled up with tapes like this. See what's inside this real quick, huh? It's this Nasty Hero one. We got this one, Gore, Outlaw of Gore. It's a sequel to this Gore. Nice, good, like a fancy cheeseball movie. I think it's Italian. This one's great. The Ninja the Protector, Transworld Entertainment. You gotta love some Transworld love. I love that. So good cheese, and pretty much it's not even the movie that's covered. Like, it's not even in it, but it's awesome. What do we got here? Oh, it's a classic. Mad Balls. I recently got this sort of like 4 months ago. Maybe a little bit longer. I got this at a convention. Very good one right there. Gotta love some Junior. Great movie. Not really like a slasher, more like a revenge kind of movie, but it's still super fun and cheeseball. Look at here. Freak Maker by Vidcrest. Donald Pleasant's great monster kind of movie. Love it. What else do we have here? Hard Rock Zombies. Good stuff. Nice, good hard rock heavy metal horror by Canon Video. Love the cover of this. This is a great one. One of the better heavy metal horror movies. My favorite one is Trick or Treat, but in Rocktober Blood, this is right up there for some good cheese. Look at this, Nico Mascaraki's Grandma's House. Also did Island of Death.